I am Sadie, 36 years old. I once believed that if I was kind enough, patient enough, and asked for nothing, there would always be a place for me in the family. But then they sent me a document asking me to sign away the house along with a message. You're not planning to come back, right? No one asked how I was living. They just needed my signature. And I understood some people don't forget you, they just need your silence to erase you more easily. I don't know when I stopped being counted. It doesn't happen the way people think it does. No shouting, no slammed doors, no final line in the sand. It's quieter than that, like a name left off a list no one admits exists. The message came while I was rinsing out a coffee mug at the office sink. Not my usual one the porcelain had chipped last week. This one had a faded logo from a conference I never attended. I remember running my thumb along the worn edge as the screen lit up. Your family's all together tonight. Just saw Lacey's story. You already there? Erin never meant harm. She assumed I knew. I locked my phone, then unlocked it again. The story was still up. A long dining table, white candles, linen napkins. Lacey had captioned it, "Family Time." Everyone was there, my mother, Carolyn, my brother, Evan, my sister, and even my father, who usually skipped these things. There were wine glasses raised mid-toast. The photo was carefully framed. I wasn't in it. I checked the group thread. Nothing. No message, no change of plan, not even a vague dinner tonight. I scrolled back a week to make sure I hadn't missed anything. I hadn't. It didn't feel like forgetting. It felt like precision. Still, I typed something simple. Did I miss something for tonight? It sat on delivered for 47 minutes. Then my mother called. Her voice tried to stretch itself into casual. "Oh, nothing serious, honey. Just some family talk. We figured you were tied up with work." The words came one after the other, like beads on a string, smooth, practiced, familiar. I stood in the hallway outside my apartment phone, pressed to my cheek keys, still in hand. So I'm not part of those talks anymore. There was a pause, the kind that's not about thinking, but choosing. Well, it wasn't anything you'd need to worry over. It's more about Evan's situation. And Lacey's lease. Just housekeeping stuff. She'd used that word before housekeeping once, after removing me from a shared bank account, without telling me. The call ended the way most of ours did, with her sighing something polite and me agreeing to it without moving my mouth. Inside, I set the keys on the kitchen counter and stared at the bowl of oranges I bought a week ago. Still unpeeled. Still too perfect looking to feel real. I opened the group photo again. Evan was wearing that sweater I gave him 3 Christmases ago. Lacey's lipstick matched the burgundy napkins. My father looked surprisingly content. There was an extra chair at the table. Not empty, just out of frame. I once believed space was enough, that if I stayed out of the way, made myself useful, but not demanding they'd remember to reach for me when it mattered. I thought love could be earned by not asking for it. My phone buzzed again, another message not from them. This one, from Erin. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. I tapped the side of the phone until the screen went black. Later that evening, I took the cardigan from the back of my chair and folded it carefully. There was a loose thread along the sleeve I hadn't noticed before. I pulled it gently until it caught, then tucked it under the seam. That's the thing about worn fabric. Once it starts to come apart, it rarely stops in just one place. I boiled water, though I wasn't sure if I was making tea or just needed the sound. The kettle's whistle didn't reach me until the second shrill. In the drawer beneath the microwave, there's a small tin box I hadn't opened in a while. Inside it, a key to my parents' old house, a ticket stub from Lacey's college recital, and a note my father once left in my lunch during freshman year. "You always figure it out. Love, Dad." I don't remember what I was supposed to figure out. The note was written on the back of a grocery receipt, the ink now faded to the color of ash. It's strange how people can vanish from your daily life while still appearing in your phone's favorites. Stranger still how quickly you stop expecting the phone to ring. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't upset either, not in the way that makes you pace or cry or throw something against the wall. I just folded the cardigan again and left it on the armrest, as though it might be needed in the morning. Before bed, I cleared out the messages from the family thread. Not deleted, just archived like putting old photographs in a box you no longer open, but also can't bring yourself to throw away. At some point, you learn the difference between silence and absence. One is something you choose, the other is chosen for you. And I think in this case the absence arrived long before I noticed the door had quietly closed behind me. Some people earn their place in a family by being loud. I tried to earn mine by being useful. It started early. One of my report cards went missing in middle school, and no one noticed. I didn't say anything. That same week, Evan got caught skipping algebra, and the entire kitchen became a courtroom. I was in the corner reloading the dishwasher, quietly fixing what no one had asked me to. When Lacey's marriage ended, she arrived at my apartment without knocking. Her mascara had already dried into the collar of her coat. I gave her my bed and moved to the couch. She stayed 3 months. On the second month's utility bill, the rate doubled. She didn't mention it. Neither did I. The cable remote had a cracked battery cover. Every night I taped it shut again. At Thanksgiving that year, someone brought it up over dessert. "It's good you're alone, Sadie. Makes it easier to take people in." No one laughed. It wasn't a joke. I paid Evan's first semester at Heartland Community after he lost his scholarship. He said the administration was biased. I didn't ask what he meant. I just drove to the bursar's office and handed over a check. The man at the window thanked me like I was his sister. Carolyn once cried in the laundry room. I was there dropping off linens and she didn't see me right away. The sobbing stopped the moment she did. "It's just, your father's treatments aren't fully covered. The hospital keeps shifting the goalposts." I opened a new credit line that afternoon. When the email confirmation came through, I replied to her message with 2 lines. "It's under my name. Use it when needed. I'll sort it." She didn't respond. 3 days later, a charge appeared for a grocery delivery. I never saw a thank you, but I assumed that meant things had gone smoothly. There was a rhythm to it. Quiet requests, unspoken approvals, a pattern of me stepping in without being asked, and them learning they didn't have to. At some point, my helping stopped being noticed and started being expected. During a family meeting at my parents' place 2 summers ago, Lacey arrived late and knocked over her glass of water. It splashed across the table and onto Carolyn's printed notes. I grabbed paper towels, blotted the pages, refilled everyone's glasses. No one paused. No one looked over. Franklin glanced up once. "Good thing you're fast with your hands." I still don't know if that was praise or correction. I found a card last week at the back of my desk drawer. It was from Carolyn Blank inside with a watercolor pear on the front. No message, no signature, just the envelope my name in her handwriting. There was a stain on the corner, faintly brown like old tea. It might have been reused. When my first promotion came, I told them over dinner. I'd practiced saying it, modestly, made sure not to sound proud. Before I'd finished, Evan asked if I could help co-sign a lease. Lacey asked if I had points for a flight. Franklin cut his steak and said nothing. Carolyn picked parsley off her plate. Later in the kitchen, she looked over her shoulder and said, "Sweetie, you're doing well because you don't make waves. Don't change that." I nodded. Then I washed the roasting pan twice, even though it didn't need it. One winter, I offered to take care of the insurance forms for Dad's follow-up appointments. The paperwork kept arriving at my apartment instead of theirs. At first, I sorted it into a manila folder. Then the folder became a box. I still have it under the bed. I'm not sure they even knew the mail was being forwarded. Lacey once told me while adjusting her bracelet eyes on her wrist, "It's good you're low maintenance. You don't need much to be part of things." I don't remember what I was doing at that moment. Probably folding napkins. It wasn't that I never asked for anything. It was that over time I stopped expecting a yes. A few years ago, I tried suggesting a vacation for all of us, something modest. A cabin somewhere, no Wi-Fi. I offered to plan it, even front some of the cost. Carolyn smiled the way she does when trying not to show discomfort. "Maybe next year. This one's already full." I nodded, then deleted the spreadsheet I'd made. I think I believed for a long time that my willingness would be enough. That being useful could keep me visible. That quiet could be a form of belonging if performed with precision. But usefulness is easy to forget, and quietness fades faster than noise. I never made a scene, never demanded an apology. I ironed the tablecloths, rewired the TV cables when they frayed, kept batteries stocked in the drawer. No one ever thanked me for organizing. That was the role. That was the cost. And if no one remembered to name it, I reminded myself better to be helpful than to be left out. But sometimes I wonder if it made any difference at all. Some things you don't notice until they're already gone, the way a voice stops calling from another room, or how your name fades from the inside flap of an envelope. I planned my 30th with quiet precision. Nothing extravagant. A few friends' homemade appetizers, a string of lights across the window, even though they flickered at random. I'd set the table with the good glasses, the ones boxed in storage that I almost didn't bother unpacking. I texted everyone 2 weeks in advance. No one from home came. The morning of, I got a message from "Carolyn works a mess and your father's not sleeping. We'll catch up another time." The phrasing didn't surprise me. The idea of another time was always easier to say than to schedule. I still made the spinach tart. I still folded the cloth napkins. I still left a chair empty just in case. There was a ceramic dish someone left behind that night. Pale blue, faint chip on the edge. I've kept it in the back of the cupboard ever since. It doesn't match anything else I own. When I got promoted to associate director, I booked a reservation for 6. A quiet place, nothing fussy. I told them all a week ahead. Carolyn, Franklin, Lacey, Evan. I didn't mention the title change in the text. I wanted to tell them in person while we were all together. We weren't. Only Lacey came. She scrolled through her phone while I ordered wine. After the server left, I tried to start the conversation gently. Something like, "It's official. I've stepped into the new role." She barely looked up. "Mom said to pray for me. I've got that second-round interview on Monday. Big deal, if I get it." I nodded. I took a sip too quickly and felt the burn at the back of my throat. Lacey took a selfie with the dessert. I paid the check. There's a linen-bound notebook in my desk drawer. I use it for lists. I never show anyone things I've done, milestones I don't share. Somewhere on page 7, in tight handwriting, "Promotion approved." No one asked what I do now. One fall I went back to the house on Whitlow Ridge. I hadn't planned it. I was dropping off documents for Franklin's insurance and decided to hand-deliver them instead of mailing. The living room hadn't changed. Same floral curtains, same faint smell of lemon polish and faintly burned coffee. On the wall next to the upright piano no one plays anymore was the photo frame. 8 images gridded behind glass. Evan in a cap and gown. Lacey at her recital, Carolyn and Franklin at the lake, one empty square with a decorative placeholder that read, "Life's sweetest moments." My stomach didn't drop, my hands didn't shake. I just looked at it and thought, maybe the print shop got the count wrong. I remember asking, only because the silence was heavier than the question. Was there ever a photo of me in that frame? Carolyn didn't blink. I thought you left that box in the attic, the one with your graduation stuff. Or maybe I misplaced it when we moved the shelf. Besides, the frame only fits 4 across, unless we take Evan's baseball picture out, but your father likes that one. She left the room before I could say anything else. The words had already stopped in my throat anyway. That afternoon, I looked for the box in the attic. It wasn't there. There were 3 others marked Lacey Emas and old docs. No mention of mine. I sat on the top step of the landing and stared at my knees. The denim had worn pale around the edges, white threads peeking through the crease. I noticed a faint spot, maybe bleach, maybe time just above the seam. It's strange what you start paying attention to when you feel your outline thinning. I kept a drawer of birthday cards in my apartment, out of habit, more than sentiment. Some were from colleagues, a few from old friends. Most had been recycled over the years. One year, I found 2 cards in the mail. One was for Evan, his name written in pen, neat cursive envelope, lined with gold foil. The second was for me. No handwriting. Just a pre-printed Hallmark message, and "Love Mom," in thin blue ink written above a scratched-out name, someone else's. The Sadie was added below in block letters, smaller, apologetic. I didn't throw it out. I slid it between 2 manila folders and left it there, the same way you keep a note from the dentist, not precious, but proof. At a holiday dinner, someone brought up a family trip to the beach. Lacey laughed about Evan falling asleep in the sun. Carolyn said it was the same year she burned the green beans. I wasn't there. I looked across the table and waited for someone to notice. No one did. Franklin passed the rolls without making eye contact. I buttered mine quietly and listened. Later that evening, while clearing dishes, I reached for the ceramic serving spoon with the hairline crack along the handle, the one I gave Carolyn years ago. She pulled it from my hand. "Use the plastic one. That one's for when we have company." I didn't argue. I washed the spoon, dried it with the cloth towel, and placed it back in the drawer. That night in the guest room, I stared at the ceiling and counted the lines in the paneling. 23. Then I stopped. Not because I lost track, but because I realized the count didn't matter if no one else remembered I was there. And that, I think, is the shape silence takes. Not a sound withheld, but a space left unnamed. I used to think mistakes had fingerprints, something left behind to prove it was all just a lapse, too quick, too careless, too human. But this was clean, precise, like a decision made well in advance. The alert came through in the middle of a planning call. I muted the meeting and stared at the number for a while. The text listed an amount, one I couldn't place and certainly hadn't spent. I refreshed the app, once then again. There were 5 transactions, high-end, familiar names, La Terra Mar, Stone and Bloom, a spa I'd only ever seen in magazines left open at the dentist's office. I called the bank. A woman with a voice too gentle to be comforting walked me through the list. 5,472 at La Terra Mar Resort, 1,800 at Mira Wellness, 1,002 at Stone and Bloom. There's also airfare. 5 round-trip business class tickets to Cancun. I didn't speak for a moment. My pen hovered above the margin of an unrelated notepad, uncapped, bleeding a dark circle into the corner. When she asked if the purchases were authorized, I gave the only honest answer I had. They weren't mine. She asked about card sharing. I remembered the second line. Carolyn's name. Evans. Lacey's. Added months ago during the hospital bills and never removed. When the call ended, I sat still for several minutes, just listening to the small noise the heater made as it clicked between cycles. The company card had been touched too. A tab open in another window confirmed it pending review transactions, tagged as executive lodging and client hospitality. Except I had no travel booked. No clients in Mexico. I called Carolyn. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Then a message from Erin arrived, a screenshot first, then the caption. Thought you weren't going. Looks like they made it. In the photo, Lacey was on a lounger, sunglasses tilted just enough to catch the curve of her smile. Evan stood by a Cabana golf club in hand. Carolyn wore a wide-brimmed sun hat and held a drink with a lime wedge balanced on the rim. The caption read, "Finally family time in the sun." No tags, no mention. Just 3 faces and a backdrop I had apparently paid for. I didn't call again. I closed the photo, opened it again, then locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. The corner of the screen had a hairline crack from months ago when I dropped it stepping out of the elevator. I'd meant to get it repaired. The break had started as a thin arc, almost invisible, then deepened just enough to catch the light. I stared at it longer than the photo. The coffee machine made a clicking sound, then a soft, mechanical hum. I hadn't meant to turn it on. Maybe I had out of habit. The water hissed unevenly like it wasn't sure what to do. I unplugged it mid-cycle and stood for a moment, waiting for silence to settle back in. There's a grey envelope I keep in my desk labelled taxes. Inside is every document from the last 5 years, each return filed on time, each receipt clipped and dated. I found the most recent statements and printed them one by one, each page warm and curling slightly at the edges. The figures were simple, the line items not. There was no mistaking the names. They hadn't even tried to stagger the charges. Everything had hit within a 72-hour window. Flights, resort, spa, retail, excursions. Carolyn's name appeared on the hotel invoice. Evan's email was attached to the booking confirmation. Lacey had signed for the spa appointments, signature slightly slanted the same as on her old birthday cards. There was no message from them, no accidental call, no apology typed halfway and unsent. Just the image, the proof, and a string of transactions stacked like bricks along a wall. I didn't know they were building. The fridge buzzed to life. I ignored it. There's a mug in the cabinet with a chipped handle, a gift from a company retreat I didn't attend. It reads, "Stronger Together." The letters have faded, the print soft from years of dishwater. I picked it up and set it down again. On the dining table, a folder labelled "Pending" sat beneath a small framed print of a field. I lifted the frame, wiped the dust with the side of my sleeve, and returned it without looking too closely. Later, I opened my email and composed a message to myself with the subject line, "Documentation." I attached screenshots, forwarded receipts, listed every charge with date and amount. Then I saved it as a draft. When the phone buzzed again, I let it. When the call came in, I ignored it. That night, I folded the blanket at the foot of the bed twice instead of once, laid it square. No one else would notice, but it stayed in place longer that way. They didn't lose track. They didn't forget. This wasn't oversight. It was selection. And I finally understood what it meant to be useful without being seen. What it meant to be taken without being counted. I've never liked the sound of tearing paper. It's too final for something that can feel so small. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a message or draft an explanation. I opened the banking app and tapped through each name. Carolyn, Lacey, Evan. The small trash can icon next to each of them didn't make a sound, but I felt it anyway. A kind of hollow click beneath my thumb. After each removal, the screen returned to a clean default blue. The silence didn't mean nothing had happened. It meant nothing would be said. I called Margot Ellison the next morning. Her voice was precise and clear, with the kind of cadence that leaves no room for interpretation. She asked only what she needed. I answered with clipped details and left the rest unsaid. She didn't offer sympathy. That helped more than kindness would have. At the bank, the associate behind the frosted glass cubicle tried to smile. Her monitor blinked softly as she scrolled through the list of flagged charges. "Would you like to file a formal fraud report?" I looked down at the notepad I'd brought. 4 lines neatly written. I didn't need them anymore. "No," I said. "I'll handle it another way." She paused, fingers still over the keyboard. Then she nodded, closed the window, and printed the forms I had actually asked for. Paperwork for account separation. Documentation for revoking authorized users. A brief section on liability. I signed in black ink, twice. There's a kind of relief in not having to argue. No one protested, no one begged to stay. The systems that once connected us gave way with barely a question. That night, I closed the group chat and archived the thread. I didn't delete it. I just put it somewhere I wouldn't open again. There was a message from Lacey sent earlier. "We're still at the hotel. Do you know why the cards aren't working? No punctuation, no greeting, no acknowledgement." I didn't reply. In the bottom drawer of my bedroom dresser, I kept a box of envelopes, the plain kind, not the ones with security lining. I slid a blank one from the back and placed the card inside. The credit card now cut neatly in 2. Not snapped, not shredded, just a single even line across the center with kitchen scissors, the kind of line that doesn't look rushed or angry, the kind you make when you've already decided. I sealed the envelope and left it on the edge of the desk. There's a studio apartment west of town, near a faded gas station and a laundromat with only one working dryer. The ceiling is low and the carpet is a tired grey, but the locks are new. The windows stay shut unless I open them, and the mailbox doesn't come with keys I have to share. I brought only what fit into 2 boxes and 1 duffel bag. Clothes, a single saucepan, 4 books, a wool sweater that still smells faintly of detergent, and something older. On the table at my old apartment, I left the mantel clock Franklin gave me in college. It had stopped keeping time properly, losing 2 minutes every week, but, he'd said, nothing worth having runs perfectly. I didn't take it. I didn't rewind it. When I turned in the keys to the leasing office, the woman behind the counter asked if I was downsizing. I told her it was just time. There's a scar on my left index finger from a paper cutter in 5th grade. It healed in the shape of a comma. I run my thumb over it when I'm thinking. That week, I did it often sometimes without noticing. The skin is smooth now. No pain. Just memory. I kept 1 photo, not of them. It was taken from the inside of a bus window on a trip I once made to Portland alone. A blurred treetop in soft winter light. No faces. No frame. I clipped it to the fridge with a rusted magnet and didn't center it. Erin called once. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. When I visited the notary to sign a change of address document, The man asked if I'd like to forward any mail from my previous residence. I told him no. He blinked, then checked the box that read, "Do not forward." There's a quiet kind of authority in checking the box yourself. I sat on the floor of the new apartment that evening with my back to the wall, the light low, the faucet dripping once every 12 seconds. I didn't turn it off. I counted the sound instead. 3 times I started writing a draft letter. Each time I folded the page before I finished the second paragraph. None of them said anything that needed saying. On the last sheet, I wrote nothing at all. I folded it into thirds and slipped it inside the envelope with the card. I taped it shut and slid it to the back of the drawer. No address, no stamp. There are ways of answering without speaking, and sometimes the clearest sentence is the one you never send. There's a difference between being left alone and choosing to be. I didn't set an alarm. The room held its own kind of silence, one that didn't expect anything from me. No blinking icons, no unread messages with invisible weight, just the muted thrum of pipes and the slight groan of the building settling. The kettle was slower than I remembered. I had bought it years ago on sale, thinking I'd use it for late-night tea during project deadlines. It stayed boxed until now. The steam rose soft and uneven. I chose Earl Grey, the kind with blue cornflowers in the blend fancy enough that I used to save it for guests. I never had many. The cup felt heavier than it looked. I sat near the window, which didn't open properly, but let light in through the film-covered glass. It painted the wall with soft distortion, wobbled shadows of tree branches, a parked car's blinkers pulsing once before going still. I hadn't checked my phone in 2 days. The studio smelled faintly of paint, like the last tenant had tried to erase something. The floor creaked in one corner, and the bathroom light flickered if the switch wasn't pressed just right. But nothing here reminded me of them. That was its greatest feature. A list had started forming in my head without permission. Not a list of tasks, those were easy. This one felt more like inventory, what I'd kept, what I hadn't. 2 ceramic bowls, a knife with a cracked handle, 1 photo I hadn't thrown out but didn't frame, a scarf I never wore, still smelling faintly of rosemary shampoo from a December flight years ago. A letter folded once in handwriting I recognized as mine. It started with, "Dear Mom, in case you ever think about apologizing." I didn't finish it. The page had been torn from a legal pad with jagged edges, the ink slightly smudged in the corner from where my wrist had rested too long. I read it once, then I tore it down the middle. The pieces stayed on the table for a while, before I swept them into the trash with the back of my hand. No ceremony, no pause, just the quiet sound of paper meeting metal. I opened the cabinet beneath the sink and found a tin of beans and a box of crackers. That was enough. I didn't need more. Hunger, like everything else, had changed shape. Outside, someone argued on the phone. Their voice bounced through the walls in short bursts, then faded. I listened not for content, but cadence. It reminded me of the way Franklin used to pace during tax season, muttering numbers under his breath, like they owed him something. When I turned off the light above the stove, the hum stopped too. The silence returned, layered and clean. I sat again. There was a small stack of mail near the door. Flyers, mostly. A dentist offering a $40 cleaning, a pizza coupon I wouldn't use, 1 plain envelope with no return address, inside a pre-approved credit offer, gold lettering, a fake embossed signature at the bottom. I folded it neatly, without reading the details, and slipped it into the bottom drawer. Later, I opened the window as far as it would allow. Just enough for air, not enough to reach out. I sat with the breeze until it turned too cool, then pulled the sweater tighter across my arms. There's a notebook on the nightstand now. Not a journal. Not a plan. Just a place to write what doesn't need to be said out loud. Today's entry was short. It's easier to breathe when no one is waiting to interrupt you. I once thought noise meant life. The hum of phones, the overlapping conversations, the texts arriving before I finished swallowing. But this quiet, it didn't echo. It held. No one asked where I'd gone. That helped. If someone had called, I might have had to answer. And I didn't want to become fluent in explaining myself to people who never really listened. I made a cup of tea again that evening. Same blend. This time I didn't wait by the kettle. I let it whistle once before turning it off, letting the sound dissolve into the empty room. I kept the lights low. I liked the way the shadows stretched. There's a nail in the wall above the heater. Just one. I don't know what hung there before, but I haven't replaced it. It feels honest that way, unfinished, undecorated, unclaimed. Somewhere between the second cup of tea and folding the same shirt 3 times, I thought maybe starting over isn't a declaration. Maybe it's just what happens when you stop performing absence for others and start living it for yourself. I didn't answer the messages that came in after. I didn't open the group chat I knew was still there, archived but not deleted. I didn't need to. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't ask to be broken. And I chose to stay inside it. People don't really return for you. They return for what they forgot to take. The email came on a Thursday afternoon while I stood in line at a small coffee cart tucked behind the hardware store. I didn't recognize the sender at first, just the sharp uppercase formatting in the subject line, Document Review Transfer of Family Property Rights. I tapped it open. The body was brief, the tone carefully impersonal. There was no greeting, only a sentence. Please review and return with signature by end of week. Attached a scanned draft of a legal document requesting that I relinquish all remaining interest in the Whitlow property, specifically the house. The house I had lived in from age 9 to 21. The house where my father kept his ties in colour order, and Carolyn measured pantry inventory like it was a moral exercise. The explanation in the file read, "To facilitate consolidated management of family property, ensure efficient elder care, and minimize future disputes." The names of Evan and Lacey were typed cleanly into the recipient field. Mine sat above the signature line reduced to initials and a dashed line, S. Whitlow, non-residing party. I stood still, even after the barista called out the next order. Someone behind me coughed. I stepped aside and let 2 people go ahead, then locked my screen and placed the phone in my coat pocket without replying. The document didn't ask. It presumed. That evening, I reread the message once, not to absorb the content, but to confirm I hadn't missed anything personal. There was nothing, no context, no voice behind the words, just Russell Granger, the Whitlow family attorney, doing what he had always done, delivering transactions as if they were neighbourly favours. I boiled water and didn't pour it. The following day, a call came in mid-morning, Carolyn. The number wasn't saved anymore, but the area code and the pause between rings gave it away. I answered. "I know you're still upset," she began. No greeting. "But this isn't the time to let things linger. The documents need to be signed." I stayed quiet. "You're not planning to move back, right? Then this just makes things simpler. No drama, no confusion." She waited, then pressed forward. "If you keep delaying, it'll start to look messy. People ask questions. There's a Whitlow reunion next month, and we'd like everything to be smoothed out before then." Her voice caught briefly, not with emotion, but strategy. Don't let something small turn into a headline. Just sign and send it back. That's all we need. Not what do you need, not are you well. Just we need. I hung up after 12 seconds of silence. There's a wooden box beneath my bed, something I once used to store birthday cards and spare passport photos. It now holds the things that don't belong to any current moment. My birth certificate, a vaccination card from 91, a spare set of keys with no matching lock, and one photo, black and white scalloped edges unevenly faded. A family portrait from the late 90s, taken on the church steps after Easter service. Carolyn wears pale gloves. Evan grips a plastic toy sword. Lacey holds a daffodil. I'm barely in the frame, just the edge of one shoulder part of my dress, a blurred curl of hair, as if I had shifted at the last second, or hadn't been pulled close enough to matter. No one ever retook the photo. I put it back in the box and shut the lid without sound. On Sunday morning, a new group text appeared, Whitlow House Coordination, created by Lacey. Her profile photo now showed her in workout gear beside a Labrador I'd never met. Hey, just looping everyone in, so we're aligned, need those docs signed before Friday, would be a big help. Below it, Evan added a thumbs-up emoji. Carolyn added, we can't afford more delays. Let's be reasonable. I tapped Leave Conversation and deleted the thread. At noon, another email from Russell just circling back on the transfer documents. Please confirm intent to sign. No, hope you're well. No, please reach out if you have questions. Just an expectation delivered like a memo. A task, not a conversation. I didn't answer. I sat on the floor that evening and placed my phone face down under a chipped saucer. The weight of the porcelain helped. I lit a single tea light, not for warmth, but for the discipline of quiet light. Somewhere I imagined the conversation they might be having without me. She's always so difficult. She doesn't even live there. This is why she never fit in. I didn't interrupt them. I let them finish in my head and disappear. On Monday I went to the corner print shop. I needed new toner and envelopes, but not for the contract. For something else, a file I was creating without urgency, just for me. Labeled unreturned things. A list of what had once been mine in name but not in practice. The second-floor closet, my seat at the table, the right to hesitate without being called ungrateful. When the clerk handed me the receipt, she smiled. Would you like to join our rewards program? I shook my head. I didn't explain why. That afternoon, a letter arrived by post, hand-delivered, not certified. The return address was Russell's office. The envelope was smooth white, heavier than necessary. Inside, the same documents I had already received by email, printed this time, clipped together with a black binder pin. Attached was a yellow sticky note. Please sign and return before Friday. Let me know if clarification is needed. I stared at the pin. Then I removed it, placed it in the drawer, and tore the packet in half once vertically, once again across. I did it slowly, not from spite, but precision. I folded the pieces and placed them inside a manila envelope. I didn't seal it. I left it by the door, not as a message, but as an object, something that no longer had authority over the space it occupied. The next day, no one called. No messages, no reminders, just silence thick enough to touch. There's a pen I used to keep for signing birthday cards. Navy ink, gold cap, the kind my father once called too pretty to be practical. I hadn't used it in years. I unscrewed it and let it rest on the table. I didn't write. The quiet didn't ask anything of me. I thought again of Carolyn's voice on the phone, the way she paused between sentences like she was choosing words not for meaning, but for sound. like she needed the appearance of fairness more than fairness itself. Don't let people think we're divided. I hadn't known division was a greater sin than theft. I left the documents shredded in the envelope. I left the pen uncapped. I left the phone uncharged. I stood by the window as the light dimmed and thought not about revenge or justice, but about space, the kind that doesn't come from pushing others away, but from no longer stepping forward. Some families don't remove you with violence. They remove you with use. And when you stop being useful, they return not to reconcile, but to collect. They didn't come back for me. They came back for my absence because it left a gap they couldn't Photoshop out. And I understood. Sometimes what they need isn't your forgiveness. It's your consent to keep being erased. I declined, silently, fully, without ceremony, without pen. I used to think healing would feel like clarity. It doesn't. It feels like walking past things that used to make me pause. There's a small trail behind the studio, just enough gravel to make a sound beneath my shoes, not enough to trip on. I've started walking it most mornings, not for exercise, but to mark the hour between silence and obligation. I bring a notebook and a white ceramic mug. The print's nearly faded now, just the ghost of a phrase. Keep things simple. The kind of motto you'd find in a discount bin, but it feels right in my hand. I rinse it every morning, dry it with the same cloth and place it carefully back on the wire rack. Not for show, just for order. Noah helped me reorganize my client deck. He didn't comment on the outdated logos or the uneven formatting, just asked, "You still want to do this full time?" I nodded. He sent a list, 3 freelance listings, 2 portfolio guides, 1 simple line. "You need to bill for your time like it matters." I didn't reply, but I printed the list and folded it into my planner. A quiet kind of instruction. The first small project came a week later, minor copy editing for a software firm that didn't ask for meetings. The invoice felt strange to send, like I was pretending to be a version of myself that hadn't been slowly erased. It cleared in 3 days. When Aunt Helen called, I saw her name flash on the screen. I didn't touch the phone, just let it blink until it stopped. No guilt, no explanation. I used to write scripts in my head for moments like that, things I would say if I had more courage or less history. I don't do that anymore. Not speaking is also an answer. That night, Erin messaged, "Your mom called you hard to follow again. I told her maybe you're just tired of translating yourself." Then another message. "Honestly, how did you stand it for so long?" I typed slowly, then deleted, rewrote, and sent. I used to think it was love. Now, I think it was convenience. She reacted with a heart emoji. I left it there. There's a photo frame above my desk, the one that used to hold a family portrait. I took the picture out 2 weeks ago. I didn't tear it. I just folded it once and placed it in the drawer. Now the frame holds a photo. I took myself, soft sky, no people. Just light over early rooftops, the kind that looks like breath before the world wakes. I took it the first week here when everything still smelled like cardboard and dish soap. I framed it, not because it was beautiful, but because it was mine. The man at the corner cafe asked if I'd like my usual. I hadn't realized I had one. Small drip splash of oat. I nodded. Simple, like the mug says. He smiled like that was enough. Back home, I reviewed another project brief. This one from a client in Portland. Short timeline, minimal direction. Just the kind of work I used to hand off to Lacey when she said, "You're better at details, just clean it up for me." No credits. No thank you. Only God, you're so reliable. I used to take that as praise. Now I just log the hours and save the file under my own name. When I finish, I reward myself with tea, Earl Grey steeped weak, no sugar. It's become a quiet clock, something that divides work from not work. I drink it with the same mug, always the same one. The apartment is still half empty, but it doesn't feel lacking. There's enough space for a folding table, one chair, and a stack of books I actually want to read. I light a candle, sometimes not for scent, just to soften the corners of the room. Carolyn hasn't called again. Neither has Russell. The envelope with the shredded documents is still in the drawer, unsealed, untouched. It doesn't feel like defiance. Just completion. I do laundry on Wednesdays. The studio has a shared washer in the basement. There's a woman there named Marcy who always folds everything twice. She asked once, "You live alone?" I nodded. "It's quieter that way," she said, not unkindly. Then, "Sometimes the quiet's the only part that feels honest." I didn't argue. I bought a new planner last weekend. The old one had too many post-it notes from another life, reminders like, "Pick up Dad's meds and check Lacey's email." I threw it out without ceremony. The new one is smaller, leather-bound, unmarked. On Sunday, I listed out my hours and wrote one small note in the margin. "You have time now. Use it." I didn't write who I was talking to. There's a voice I used to hear in my head when I made decisions. Carolyn's or sometimes Evan's. "Don't be difficult. You don't have to prove a point. Why can't you just let things go?" That voice is quiet now. Not gone. Just irrelevant. I don't try to be understood anymore. I try to be precise. In the cabinet above the stove there's a mug with a small crack. Not the keep things simple one, a different one. The crack runs along the handle. I keep it anyway. I don't pour anything hot into it. I just like knowing it's there. Flawed, but still part of the shelf. Still whole enough to stay. Some days I wake up and forget there's anyone to impress. No one waiting to mark attendance. No one measuring loyalty by obedience. I go for a walk. I take a photo of the sky. I open the notebook not to record accomplishments, but to remember I was present. I no longer believe in being the better daughter. I believe in being allowed to leave the table without explanation. Some silences don't ask for healing. They only ask that you don't return. I used to believe that names were fixed things like birthdays or blood types, but they aren't. Names can be given, taken erased, or folded into the silence between conversations. The form asked for a reason. Beneath the blank line, I wrote, "I no longer wish to be represented by those who erased me." The clerk didn't look up. She just stapled the page and pointed to the second counter. I nodded, stepped aside and waited, as if waiting were still part of belonging. The pen I brought was one I'd used for work, silver, fine-tipped, not sentimental. I clicked it 3 times before signing, not out of hesitation, just habit. Sadie Ellen Carr. The middle name had come easily. Ellen was the one who kept a drawer of hard candy, always wrapped in paper that crackled. She never asked why I was quiet, never made me explain the spaces between sentences. Her house smelled like starch and orange peels. No one shouted there. No one measured me against anyone else. After she died, Carolyn took the Afghan from the foot of her bed and folded it into a linen closet. "Might as well go to someone who can use it," she said. She meant Lacey. I had touched the hem of that blanket before it disappeared. It had one small tear near the edge, stitched shut with green thread. A fix that just showed. I kept the thread. The envelope I addressed had no return name, just a number. I slid the unsigned inheritance documents inside, then added a single note folded once, no greeting. I declined to participate. There was no anger in the way I sealed it, just clarity. The box by the door held the last of the Whitlow letters, old cards, holiday photos with printed signatures, a program from Franklin's retirement ceremony. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred. I just closed the lid and left it in the hall with a note. Free. No one asked for my forwarding address. No one needed to. When the change became official, I stopped checking the old email. It had been linked to calendars, reminders, subscription renewals for people I didn't speak to anymore. I kept it for a month longer just to make sure. Then I typed the password one last time, clicked delete account, and watched the bar crawl across the screen. It didn't feel like a door closing. It felt like the hallway had always been too long. At the DMV, the clerk held up my new ID and glanced at me over the plastic divider. Car. I nodded. You sure about the spelling? I nodded again. She slid the card across the counter. Here you go, Miss Carr. No one had ever said it aloud before. It didn't echo. It just landed quietly. That night, I sat on the floor with a manila folder open in front of me. I filled out change of name forms, bank insurance, voter registration. Some asked for a reason. Most didn't. For the ones that did, I typed the same phrase, personal and permanent. A week later, a letter arrived. It was from Russell Granger's office. Thin envelope. No return signature. Inside was a single sheet, no heading. We regret that you've chosen to remove yourself from the family estate. Please confirm your final decision. No warmth. No confusion. Just one sentence printed neatly. I placed it under the leg of my small kitchen table to stop the wobble. I don't answer messages that ask why anymore. At the corner post office, I dropped off the envelope for the return. The man behind the counter didn't ask what it contained, just weighed it and said, Standard delivery. I nodded. Any tracking? No need. He handed back the receipt. I left it on the counter. In my apartment, the walls remain unadorned, save for a new hook where I hang a single key studio mailbox and storage all in one. The tag reads, Car, black, ink on beige plastic. Cheap, but deliberate. The sound it makes when it taps the hook is dull and clean. No echo. Carolyn used to say you don't walk away from family. You find a way back in, Evan added. Once. You think you're better than all this, just because you work in a tower. Lacey, the last time we spoke, you've always been dramatic. That's why you never quite fit. They weren't shouting. They were just reading a script I no longer wanted to audition for. The last thing I kept from that world was the bracelet I got for my college graduation. It wasn't engraved, it wasn't expensive, but it had been presented to me in a velvet box with a card signed, We're proud of you. Just don't forget where you came from. I took it out this morning, laid it on the counter, and stared at the clasp for a long time. Then I dropped it in the kitchen drawer with the cracked mug and the thread from Ellen's Afghan. Not discarded, not displayed, just placed where it no longer required explanation. Some endings don't thunder. They hum low and steady, like the sound a refrigerator makes at 2 a.m. when no one's around to hear. I didn't change my name to become someone new. They changed it to become someone who didn't have to be erased to be real. I don't reach for the clock anymore, not because I sleep through the morning, but because no one is waiting to measure my arrival. No one marks whether I've shown up, whether I'm blending in quietly enough to pass for family. The kettle hums in the background. 2 slices of bread settle into the toaster with a quiet click. I step onto the small balcony, concrete worn smooth railings pale with weather, and notice dew still holding on the edges of the sage plant by the wall. There's nothing remarkable about this morning. That's what makes it stay. I pour tea into the plain ceramic mug, not the kind someone once gave me. I chose this blend because of the way it settles fragrant but soft. A middle note neither bold nor fading. I suppose I've become that. An envelope sits unopened beside the window. Legal confirmation of my new name from the federal systems. I haven't rushed to tear it open. I already know it's real. The name isn't a disguise. It's not an erasure. It's an origin chosen, not assigned. A different lineage, one that never asked me to be useful before being seen. I haven't responded to Uncle Richard's emails. I didn't listen to Lacey's voicemail. Not out of resentment. There's simply no audience left in me for the performance they're still rehearsing. That old family scene, full house, tight smiles, someone holding the camera, and someone always just outside the frame. There is nothing to clarify. If something needs explaining, it was never held carefully in the first place. A small wooden box sits on the shelf. It doesn't hold family photographs anymore. It holds scraps, torn grocery lists, clipped recipes, a line from an essay I once copied in pencil on handmade paper. Healing is not about returning. It's about planting where no one expected growth. I framed that line in a thin glass square and hung it near the window. The sky today isn't brilliant. It isn't storming either. It's that soft grey clarity that asks for no performance, as if the world is quietly breathing and no longer needs to be watched. I lift the white mug inhale once and set it down without sipping. I don't rush. I don't rehearse. I remember years of being a shadow with a wallet, a name on paperwork, the good one, because I knew how to disappear at the right time. They said I was easy, reliable, calm. It meant I didn't interrupt the picture, not anymore. There was no ceremony, no announcement, no congratulations, and no one had to understand. There's peace in the absence of permission. The documents from this courthouse arrived last week. They're still in a drawer, folded beside the scratched-out signature pages I never signed. I never mailed them back. I didn't need to. Some things resolve without reply. At night, I write. Not for an audience, not for apology, just lines, observations, what steam looks like weeing off the stove when the room is still. The sound of one foot hitting the floor before the other in the dark. Sometimes I reread the lines. Most days I don't. The apartment smells like dry basil and lemon detergent. I wash the dishes after each meal, not out of discipline, but because it anchors the hour. I keep the same white towel draped over the handle. When it dries, it leaves a faint crease. I smooth it flat with my palm. No one visits. That isn't loneliness, it's clarity. I make just enough for my self-fold, just what I use, answer only the voices I let in. Erin texted last week. You okay? Really? I stared at the screen and typed, I am. You don't need to defend me anymore. Then I deleted it. I replied instead. You can stop explaining. I already stopped. Outside the window, 2 pigeons land on the opposite ledge. They don't stay long. Nothing does except silence. And that I've learned has weight if you let it rest. I still have the folder from my old firm, not because I plan to go back, but because it reminds me I once belonged to something that didn't pretend. Work was work. Numbers were numbers. My name was typed, filed, and paid, not questioned, softened, or borrowed. There's a voice I don't hear anymore. My mother's voice in the back of my mind measuring me in quiet critiques. That silence, too, has its own kind of mercy. Some afternoons I walk past the old neighbourhood not out of longing. It just happens to be on the way to the market. If I pass the Whitlow mailbox, I don't look. If they saw me, I don't know what they'd think, but I suspect they'd look through me as they always did, searching not for the person, but for what she could still offer. I don't offer anything now, not because I'm closed, but because I am full. The plants on the windowsill lean toward the light without being instructed. I water them. Sometimes I forget. Still they grow, not dramatically, just enough. I placed a note behind the cabinet door. It's taped there where no one sees. Just 3 words handwritten in small, even print. No more rehearsals. I wrote it during one of those mornings when nothing happened, and I realized that nothing was all mine. Now, I fold the dish towel in half. I breathe into the quiet. I don't owe any of it to anyone, and still it feels earned.